Welcome to LYLAS. If you grew up in the 90s and you know what that stands for, then by default, this podcast is for you.
That's right. Welcome and thanks for joining us again. We are here with episode 6, right, Jen?
That's right. Episode 6. We're so excited to delve into a new topic this week. But first, before we get into our hot topic, let's talk a little bit about what Sarah did this weekend at New York Fashion Week.
Yeah. One of the big things that we try to talk about within this podcast is how we all had dreams, like back whenever we were kids growing up in the 90s. And of course, I was obsessed with like Nikki Taylor and, Cindy Crawford and all these people. But, growing up in West Virginia when you're 5'5", that just isn't going to, the dream is 5'7" to 5'9", and that's just not going to happen. So at least at that point in time. And so that was kind of like a bubble burster, right?
Right.
But I, for whatever reason, have just always been enthralled with that whole, I don't know, kind of concept of fashion. I really see it as art and playful and an expression. It's
Absolutely.
not, yeah, it's just not like I'm looking at something and think, oh, that's a nice piece of clothing. I'm like, wow, somebody just made something that is truly like a piece of art. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I never let that dream kind of die. And I was able to get involved in it um, through two venues. One, through just kind of taking a chance and signing up with like a modeling based kind of agency where, you can apply to get into and represent and then go and be a part of one of their fashion shows. And then the other way was through me representing the All Star United States Pageant Organization. And so with that, it allowed me to walk in Fashion Week, and that's fun. It really, really is, but it is absolute like chaos. Like if you all could see what happens behind stage and then know that these models are then able just to like put it on and walk out there, whoo, your mind would be blown. Um, because you're always just like changing clothes, hair and makeup, 200, 300 people all around. And so it's definitely it's a circus.
The circus, I'm sure your adrenaline is just pumping the whole time, too.
Yeah, it's pretty, that helps. The music is always real upbeat, and so it makes it super fun. The venues are always really cool. Um, it's always kind of nerve-wracking when they're putting clothes on you. Is it going to fit? Is it going to look right? Like, what do I do with this nipple? It's this weird stuff. Things you wouldn't have to think about. But I will say that I think one of the cool things that's happened as part of us getting older, and this is where the "don't let the dream die" kind of story comes into play, is that we are accepting so much more diversity within fashion, within our society in general. And you see models now that are all shapes, sizes, and ages, and I think that's really, really cool. And so, take home message: don't let the dream die. It could still happen. And it is fun. My favorite thing to do is MC though, which I had no idea what I was doing. So that whole imposter syndrome thing we talked about in episode 4.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, still hits you.
still hits.
Oh, huge. Especially whenever it's like it was a big sold out venue, and the chaos backstage is, and I'm emceeing, and so I'm listening to this producer and I'm seeing all this stuff go down, and I got to keep my voice in a certain tone and way. And yeah, but it was really fun.
I think that is so cool, though, that you're living your dreams and you just keep going for it no matter what. I'd love to hear your experiences each time you come back from Fashion Week. I just think it's so cool. I mean, last time who was performing? It was like Ja Rule or someone. Yeah, and
Yeah.
taking selfies. I'm like, what? Who is she? Go, Miss Thing. United States International.
There we
Uh,
go.
but I love that you never let it die. You just keep going for it and you have a blast, or at least it looks like it. I know you said it's a
Mhm.
lot of work
Mhm.
and it's exhausting, long
Mhm.
days, but you show up and you show out every time. I think it's awesome.
It's just, you got to just keep moving through it. If it's something you want to do, you just use that as motivation and drive and just go. Don't think about it. If you think about it, you're going to get screwed. That's
Yeah.
generally my motto in life.
It's so true.
So far,
Don't
it's
think,
okay.
just do.
It's right. It's 100%.
It served you well this far, so
Well,
must be doing something right.
at the moment, angels and God also help out a bunch. So,
There's
that's
a lot
for
of truth
real.
to that too.
Mm-hmm.
So today, way to celebrate our fun, first of all, the good
Yes.
and the fun, because we want to celebrate all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about a lot of the yucks, unfortunately, because that's mental health and a lot of the yucks are what bring us down. But we want to celebrate. And I wanted to touch on that because I think it is so cool what you were doing this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But also in celebration, our podcast is officially getting released this week. Our
Mm-hmm.
website, all the things are coming out. We are so excited. Of course, now it's in the past. If you're listening to this now, it's already happened. But for us, this is so exciting. So celebrating that we actually freaking did it, man.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
actually did it. And so shout out to our producer, Seth. He
Mm-hmm.
is awesome and has helped us so much. But we finally got something out. We're really pumped about that.
Yes,
But
yes.
for
Just
today,
thank you.
yes. But today's topic is all about being a stepmommy. And Sarah's
Mm-hmm.
got lots of experience in that department. I should say lots. You have a stepdaughter,
Yeah.
but she's been your stepdaughter now for what, 4, 5 years?
Five, I was almost, I mean, she's been in my life for about 5.5, 6 years, maybe a little bit more. I'm not good with math. It's
No,
been a
but when I
bit.
look at pictures that you post of her and Cam, like I can't believe
Yeah.
how little they both were when you and
Mm-hmm.
Jeff first started dating. I
Mm-hmm.
got to have a front row seat to your all's relationship from the get rep.
Mm-hmm.
But it still even blows my mind that they were so tiny and so little when you guys first started. So you've been in her life for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's one thing that Jeff always says is that the difference between him being a stepdad and me being a stepmom, because our kids are so different within their age. I mean, approximately 10 years, um, is that she will never have a time in her life where she doesn't remember me not being a part of it
Ooh,
from
good
where she
point.
was, yeah, from where she was so young. And so, there are times in which that I just have to kind of step back and be reflective of that statement, because that's not what his experience was with Cameron. So, Cameron was like 11, 12ish or something like that. And so he has prior history and memories. And, that comes with a lot. That comes with a lot of transitions that as a child he has to kind of like think about and adjust to. And that's not Rachel's experience with it. Rachel always knows her life as Cameron being her brother. And
Yeah.
so that's even what she says. Like, she'll even differentiate us sometimes in how she calls us, different names, but there's one thing that's always consistent with her and her brother is Cameron. And so that just speaks to, that kind of relationship that they've been able to cultivate and have with each other too. So
I love
that's
that you
fun.
all have kind of set up your family in that way. I mean, from the moment you came
Mhm.
into her life and you and Jeff decided that this was forever, I mean, like you said, you don't really, I've actually never heard you call her your stepdaughter. You always say
Mm-mm.
my daughter, or,
Mm-mm. Our
just from you,
kids.
your
Mm-hmm.
kids. Yeah. You've always
Mm-hmm.
referred to her as being a part of your life and your family. And having been on the opposite end of that and having had step parents, a stepmother, a stepfather, can
Mm-hmm.
so appreciate that, because one thing
Mm-hmm.
is you kind of feel like, well, where do I fit in here? Am I a part of the family? And you took that right out, that confusion right out, and just from the get rep,
Mm-hmm.
called her your daughter.
Yes.
And I just think that's so beautiful that you all have set up your family in that way to
Mm-hmm.
not differentiate and to just your family, the end,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I don't do that to take away for her mom, because that's her mom. She has a
Oh,
different relationship
absolutely.
as her daughter, but we do is they're our kids. So whenever you hear us talk about it, that's the most common, I think, pronoun that we use with it. But also, I was also a step kid too. So in
Yeah.
our family, um, they'd never called us step. So I didn't know. I was just like, that's your stepdad, okay? But I don't ever call my parents except um maybe actually my dad by dad. Like, I call my mom her first name, I called my stepdad his first name. So it was never like we identified themselves as like the biological relationship. It was just who they were. And we always were just like family. And so it was never something that came across as something that we should do, was to kind of make that. And then at about the time that Rachel was coming along, I got introduced to that movie, The Royal Tenenbaums. Have you ever watched it by chance?
I haven't. No. I've heard of it, but I've never watched it.
it's a fun movie. I mean, it's I think it's Wes Anderson is the guy who does it. But anyways, there's this whole segment in there where they have all these kids, and one of them is the adopted daughter, and they always refer to her as the adopted daughter. And you see in a very, exaggerated, maybe kind of comical way, dark comedy, however you want to put it, what this does to her in that every
Mhm.
time that she gets introduced, she gets like, this is my son and this is my adopted daughter. Like, what are we doing? And maybe that's just what some people do and that's your choice, but it just, again, in a Hollywood way, it kind of showed that. And so both of us have agreed that they are our kids. And we're not saying that badly or poorly with their other biological parents, but we're together a lot as a family, and we all kind of look alike, even the fact that we're not all biologically related, so that also works as a plus.
Yeah.
But we also let the kids dictate how they reference us, and so whether she calls me Sarah, or she calls me Mama, because Cameron calls me Mama, or whatever, we let her choose what she says, and then I don't correct her. She says that's my stepmom, she says that's my mom, and she said, because if I corrected her, then that would be hurtful to her.
Yeah.
No, I'm not your mom. I'm going to say that this kid just introduced me as her mom to her friends on the playground.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? But I'm also trying to be aware, and this is where the whole like step parenting thing kind of comes into play. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful to her biological parent because I'm not correcting this, but it's also not good if I do. And so, you know, I, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong by the whole, but I feel like in those moments, whenever her kids run up to me and go, Rachel, is that your mom? And she says, yes, I'm not going to correct her in
Yeah.
front of a bunch of kids at the playground. I'm going to be like, yep, that's my girl. You guys ready? What are y'all doing? And just, we're going to move on with our day as a part of it. But I think those are some of the struggles that you go through as a step parent, is really trying to identify that role. And I think too, is we were both step kids, had step parents. I just had this assumption that, well, hell, my parents did it really well. Like, I was a step kid. I was pretty, I mean, fine, I guess. They never complained, or it never was like served as a problem that I knew of. Um, but that didn't prepare me for this.
Right. No.
I
No,
thought
being
it
on the
did.
other end certainly doesn't prepare you. I mean, it gave you some insight because you had been in that, opposite role. But I just like listening to you talk. I was thinking about my experience as a step kid. My stepdad, I used to get so mad when I was a kid and he would refer to me as his daughter. And I'd be like, no, you have three daughters and a son. Like, I'm your stepdaughter. You need to tell people I'm your stepdaughter. And I don't know why that used to irritate me, but I think because I felt like it was taking something away from my dad. If
Yeah.
people thought I was his daughter, they wouldn't know that I was, Dave Carter's daughter. And so that always bothered me. And, I was about the same age as Cam when my stepdad came into my life. And I was really tough on him. Like, gosh, I look back and I'm like, I was just kind of a wench to him in the beginning. And he was such a great guy. He was such a good stepdad. And he told the story at my wedding. You might remember this, but he talked about how like every night he would come in and say good night. He worked out of town a lot, or he would work like nights, and then he would come in and always tell me good night. And he would say, I love you. And he would get silence, every night in return. And then about a year later, he was closing the door and he heard, I love you too. I like whispered to him. And he was like, he gave this really touching speech at the wedding and kind of connected it all back to my husband. But it just made me remember how tough I was on him as the stepdaughter. And so I guess in some respects, having had Rachel come into your life when she was so much younger might have been a little bit easier for her to accept you as that role. And because I would have never called my stepdad my dad. I would ever to this day. I mean, I've never called him dad. I've always called him, my favorite stepdaddy. That was kind of our thing. But or my stepmom. I certainly would have never called her mom, but there's no way
Mhm.
giving up that title to anybody but Barb.
Yeah.
But you know, it just, I think maybe her age certainly helped her
Mhm.
to kind of see you as this other mom figure, whatever, however
Yeah.
she sees you.
Yeah, I think that definitely age and having another sibling in the house, you know what I mean, kind of helps a
Yeah.
lot. And then the fact that, we have a great relationship with her biological mom as we do with Cameron's biological dad. And that just has to be the paramount. So I think no matter
Yeah.
how, I don't know that maybe insecure is the right word, or uncertain, or at times just kind of yuck. I feel in the moment, I have to always default back to, we have to, I can't let whatever I'm experiencing within this situation deflect from the fact that we have to have a great relationship with those other partners within this. Um,
Yes.
Especially, as they start to age, because that's whenever we're going to see a whole lot of other stuff. And at the end of the day, the kid has to be the number one priority.
Mhm.
And as long as they see and feel that, then that's kind of just up to us to do, and then to them to kind of see and experience as part of their childhood and part of their life. And so I think that where we've done a good job, I feel like, is that we've always communicated well and effectively, with the other co-parents, that we've always been respectful of those relationships, and that honestly, Jeff and I had a talk. And there may be some single ladies and, mamas out there that are, single mom and people without kids. This was what I did dating at like 35, because I was, again, just out of like a 16, I don't know, maybe 16, I don't know how long. I think it was 16 years that I was married to my ex-husband. But at that point in our lives, I just think we're done with everything that could be drama filled, like just done
Yes.
with the BS, right? And so I personally was just not interested in going out on like, and God bless, other people might be, but I just wasn't interested in like re-sowing some oats that I did in high school. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, well, if I want to start dating, then I'm going to cut to the chase of this real quick, because I don't feel like I have a lot of time to kind of like sit around and waste and kind of figure some things out. So I'm just going to throw all this shit out here. And let's just, if you're cool with it, then great. And if you're not, let's just be like, hey, this was a nice, fun date, and let's just kind of move on. And so I think very early on in our relationship, we talked about our kids and what kind of parenting we wanted our kids to have and what that was going to look like. And then, as we started to really see that this was something, we were like, okay, well, what role do you want me to have in your child's life, and vice versa? And how are we going to do this? And so that really served, I think, as our base, that then we just kind of built upon, and have taken a very pragmatic kind of approach when things have just naturally and organically kind of come up over the course of time. So
That's such a great way to go about it when you think about, because like you said, Cam was like 12, 13. He was
mhm.
entering those teenage years. You know, Rachel was what, like 3 at the time?
Yeah, she was like, I think
2 maybe even.
she
She was
just
so
turned
little
3 whenever we got married, I think. Yeah.
whenever you guys
Mhm.
got married. And
Mhm.
so both of you to just say, because that's 2 different relationships, you know, trying to
Mhm.
be a step parent to a 3-year-old versus a 13-year-old is so different.
Yeah.
I can remember when my dad remarried and she had kids that were teenagers. I think they were both teenagers. And, you know, I remember him and I having conversations like he really struggled to be a step parent to those kids and not knowing like what was his role. And same thing, you know, they were really close with their dad. And um,
Mhm.
but you guys just kind of got that out of the way from the beginning and said, hey, what kind of relationship do you foresee, or what would you
Mhm.
like for me to have with your kid, is so important to say those
Mhm.
things out loud and say, okay, I don't need you to be the disciplinarian, for example.
Right.
I'll take care of the discipline. I need you to be my partner and to back me up,
Right.
but I will discipline my child, you know, so
Mhm.
that you can
Mhm.
continue to build that strong relationship with them, that trust
Yeah.
with them, whatever that conversation looks like for each parent. But
Mhm.
awesome that you all said that out loud before you jumped into a marriage and we're full-time step parents. Like
Yeah.
have those conversations on the front end
Mhm.
versus waiting till you're in it and trying to figure it out, then.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I think that that's definitely what you want to do. And some of that, I mean, I think comes across from like our training and our experience and stuff like that. But also,
Sure.
it's just true like life stuff. Like, why are we going to go about this in a dysfunctional way when we know that there is an actual functional way that we can try to do it? And those are conversations we actually had with the other co-parents in this situation too, because even though it was it's never easy, I don't think, to talk to the new co-parent. My parents made it look easy. I thought everything was easy because my parents made everything easy. So I guess that's just still kind of my approach. Well, I mean, everything seems easy. But that's never easy conversations to kind of go in and have. And I think just doing that, acknowledging it, like just first off, like, hey, you know what? I understand that this is going to be kind of awkward talking about this stuff, but I'm doing this out of respect for you. And I don't want to overstep. And I want to make sure that, when it comes to things, especially like discipline, that at least is going to have an air of consistency with it. There might not be other things within the home that carry that, but at least the discipline kind of side of things really needs to. And I think that's where we've all been very good at being on the same page with that. But I do think that overall, probably the biggest struggles that have happened have been at times in which, you're going between two different homes.
Mm-hmm.
And there are differences. And
Absolutely.
so even whenever you try to like make those things as smooth as what's possible, it still doesn't, it's still, you're in somebody else's house.
Right.
You kind of got to live by the authority figure who's within that house, and making that transition at times can be a little bit sticky. And it
Or
always comes,
awkward.
yeah, yeah. And I always feel like, especially in my position with some of it, it's like, do you ever lose, and maybe this is a question for our audience, and those who are more experienced at being a step parent than me, do you ever lose the feeling of at times being that wicked stepmother?
Mm.
Like
Mhm.
I don't know that I ever have. And she lives with us. She goes to school here with us. And so, a lot of what happens is during the times in which it's not fun time weekends where we just get to like play and go do all kinds of like loose activities. It's like dinner, homework, shower, brush teeth, bedtime, you
Right.
know.
You have to enforce the routine.
Yes. And that's where I think I feel the most sticky with things is that it's always that the role that I'm playing, even though we incorporate a lot of fun and try to enjoy it, at the end of the day, it is still me and my husband. I mean, he does a very big, like I said, um, he's he's the enforcer. Because I mean, it's not that she doesn't listen to me, but she listens to him differently
Sure.
than what she does to me. Because I ask people to do things a whole lot. I don't specifically tell them. And that's again probably just part of who I am. And we just ask a lot of questions. You know what I mean? Just naturally. Um, but he tells her, and he tells her very firmly, and that does work. But that's also a quality of their dynamics and relationship. But it's in those times it's like, you know, when she's getting married one day, or has like some kind of cool thing happen, how is she going to kind of look back on me? Is she going to look back on me as being, well, there was this lady that lived in my house who was always like, well, it's 8 o'clock, we got to take our shower. You know what I mean? Or is she going to be reflective of some of the things that, I hope kind of also stands out in this? And so, as we kind of said in one of the episodes of the podcast, we're kind of still writing this story. I have no idea where it's going to kind of go. I think the greatest thing that I've gotten out of just things is it still comes from validation at a young age with Cameron that I was doing things right. And I know
Oh,
this,
absolutely.
yeah. Whenever he said that he looked at me and that he knew that he could be okay, considering his new diagnosis and disease, I was like, well, hell, I can't screw this up at this point.
Right. I've done something right.
Yeah, he's gonna be all right. He's already said it, so we're cool. Um, and he still is. And I think that that's maybe just part of the consistency that he's seen within things. And again, the types of relationships he has in his life. But maybe I was given a gift with him at a time in which I value and appreciate, and now really serves as good kind of grounding for me. And I know many parents probably don't get that, but I think it also makes me need to hear that more from her at
Hmm.
some point. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing, I guess. I just thought of it too. That's probably a big piece of it. Is that I got the okay stamp from him.
And you're
I
going to
don't.
want it from her
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Any
And she may
day,
not,
kid.
I mean, girls are so different. Like, again, I just go back to like my experience, even my stepmom, who, oh, I could go on for days there about the thing. She was the woman my dad had left our family for. They got married. She was 10 years younger. She was very wrapped up in diet culture. I mean, she had a lot of impact on me in some, not so negative ways, but I still have a lot of positive memories about her. I still have some kind things to say about her. I don't think that she's like an evil stepmother by any means. I think she's figuring it out as she went, and she was also struggling with mental health, in my opinion. But I also think about my stepdad and how tough I was on him. And I just, the older I've gotten, and I started to realize this when I was pretty young, I want to say like college age, I realized the opportunities that he brought to my life that I would have never had. And the gratitude that came with that, and also the structure that he gave my life. He was very strict, as you can remember. And I can appreciate that so much more now that I'm a mom, because it was always tough love. And I am so appreciative of that relationship in my life that I wouldn't have had if my parents would have stayed married. Yeah. Who knows what my life would have been like had my parents stayed married. But I do know that I benefited from having him in my life many ways, more ways than one. But it takes some time to reflect on that and to kind of go through some things in your life and see what other people go through in your life, your friends or other people that you come in contact with. Eventually you start to see, oh, wow, this person really played this huge role in getting me to become the person that I am. And so I certainly, granted, you're one of your best friends. Rachel will absolutely one day look back and go, wow, look at the opportunities, Sarah. I mean, that you've brought to her life, the love, I think more than anything, kids just need adults that love them unconditionally. Yeah. And you absolutely do that. I think back to like when you all were trying to potty train her and oh my gosh. You were, again, you're going between two different homes and you'd call me and you were like, what the hell am I doing? Little people, what do I do?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, you were always willing to take that on. And you yourself have said, those aren't your favorite years. Having young kids, you don't love that stage. No, ma'am. But the fact that you are willing to take that on and still love her unconditionally ultimately is what she will know and what she will remember. She's not going to remember you, forcing her to, get in bed every night at 8 o'clock. She's not going to remember all the strict or the routine things. She's going to remember the love, the opportunities, the experiences you gave her, showing up for her, the car rides to school. Those are the things ultimately she's going to remember.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. I think that's the ultimate hope and goal with it. But yeah, it's it's in those moments, it's still like, it's very, 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 very challenging. And it just is what it is. I think maybe it's more challenging because she was so young on my end of it, because that made me almost play in a very real way, almost like what you're saying, like a very big, like mothering role within her life, because I was changing her diapers. You know what I mean? Right. We made the potty chart. That's right. We had the potty chart out and going. And even now, every night I'm sitting there drying and brushing her hair. So my role with her, I guess from a legal context, is not the same as what I feel towards her. And being in this role as a legally defined, I guess, step parent, that in itself creates, I think, conflict, just internal conflict within yourself. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I naturally feel very biologically connected to this little girl, but yet I know that I'm not. At the end of the day,
Right. You
that's the
did not
fact.
give birth to her.
No, ma'am. No,
Right.
listen, I was one and done. There was no way that this thing was rolling down that street twice. Um, but yeah, but it still is, again, like a yucky area to feel in waves at times, and then it kind of dissipates, but it's always something that I think in a way is present. And it's just kind of negotiating with that as it arises. So we'll see.
Well, again, you're doing something right. She is a phenomenal little girl. I think everybody that knows her adores her. She's got such a just lovely spirit about her. Which, I think about all the things that you add to that because you are so fun and so carefree and such a kid at heart. I
Right.
think that you help her embody that about herself. I love to see her outfits that she picks out for herself, and you just let her roll with it. Like you don't have any control issues. You don't really, as long as she's happy, you're happy, and I
She's
love
confident.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you've really kind of taught her, and maybe she was always like that. I don't know, but she definitely comes across as like not afraid to be herself. And all I can see being your friend is that comes from you.
Yeah.
That she's watched you model that over and over again. So I just think it's a blessing to her life.
Yeah, she does dress like me. That's one thing that is 100%. Like whenever people, and we do, like we said, we kind of look alike. She's been blessed with this curly, thick hair, as opposed to this. But we dress so much alike unintentionally. Like I guess it's just through observation. She's seeing what I'm doing, and then also she's not a girl that likes to wear those big pick bows and stuff like that. But we were at a school event or something with one of our teacher friends, and she is very eclectic in her style and what she puts together. And like we said, none of us just really want to inhibit that because she's very, very creative.
Yeah.
And we just really want her to embrace that side of her. And they kind of looked at both of us and said, well, now we know where she gets it from. And I looked down because I was like, what are they talking? Oh, then I was like, okay. Yep.
Okay.
There's that.
I do. Do you ever think that it kind of works in your benefit that like you had one kid and he had one kid and that made it a little bit easier for you all to make a cohesive family versus like if he like trying to like build relationships with multiple kids, I feel like would be hard too. Like you've got one kid to focus on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would just assume that it did because each of us were so close to our individual kids.
Yeah.
Not to say that the other was not, but I think that we each have very unique relationships with our individual kids.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, it just made it our knowing our kids and being able to talk about it again openly and then give our kids the opportunity to talk about it. Like, I think that that's something that Jeff and Cameron did that was really great. And with my support, but without my direction, was that he just had a very natural conversation with him. Like, I'm not here to replace another parent. I am here to be a parent to you, which was good because he didn't say I'm here to be your friend. Right. Parents are not supposed to be friends. Like, this is where I take a hard line. Like, even clinically, you're not supposed to be your child's best friend, ever. And he told him, I'm not here to take that person's place. I'm here to be another parent to you, to help to guide you, to help to teach you and to share with you things, to support you unconditionally. And I think that by him taking that step, it really helped them with, especially Cameron being so much older and Cameron's very like sage and old man like that really kind of Cameron's my adult supervisor, actually. God, I need him all the time. But that I think really helped cultivate their relationship, because if you see the two of them, it's like they are two peas in a pod. They are the same person, just replicated almost at different points of time in their life. And even though, they might have slightly different interests, there's just so much about them that is uniquely similar, that it just really helped, I think, to cultivate such a beautiful relationship with them. And so I try to use them really as an example and to do some of the same things with her. And again, this is probably just me wanting that button to be pressed now, like, hey, you're doing a good job. You know what I mean? Or I do see you as this person in my life. Like, she's 8. Should I have an
Right.
expectation for her? No. Do I know
Absolutely not.
that? Yes. Do I care? I have a hard time with that.
That's all right. At least you know
That's
that that's
right.
what you're looking for, some sort of validation there.
Mhm.
But it will come one day. I mean, I
Yeah.
think about my own 8-year-old. Like, he's not like, "Hey, mom, you're doing a great job raising us. Really appreciate you."
Yeah.
Um, it'll come with time. But yeah,
Hmm.
I can see totally needing that approval, almost like I'm doing something right. But as parents, we always feel like that. Like, I constantly am, questioning my parenting. Um, we're constantly like, all right, is this the right thing? Is my kid getting too much screen time? Is my kid getting enough exercise? Is my kid eating the right foods? Is my kid going to the right school? You're constantly, do they have the right friends? Am I giving them enough experiences? We're always questioning ourselves. So I think part of that's just being a parent
Yeah.
to some degree, especially with young kids, because they haven't gotten far enough along to say, okay, we did something right. they're
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
still very much in development, and we're still figuring it out as we go. So I think that, that's just parenting. But I also, what made me think about, like, the fact that you all each had one kid, I think about my stepmom, and she really struggled to build a relationship with my brother. Her and I were so much easier, I think, because, well, I'm a people pleaser and, like, always want everyone to be happy. And so, I mean, I fed into, like, all of anything she wanted to do. I was down for it.
Hmm.
Whereas my brother, was older, and he was already had his interests and hobbies, and she just had a really hard time relating to him.
Hmm.
Certainly when he taped over their wedding video with, like, a Monday Night Raw WWE or something, that didn't help the relationship. Um, but but yeah, no, they never really found a groove, where, say, her and I did at some point. And but he didn't have that closeness to her. And then when we had another stepmom later in life, we were adults at that point, and that's a totally different scenario as well. Having a stepmom when you're an adult,
Yeah.
is different, but she was lovely, or is.
Hmm.
She's my dad's widow at this point, but
Hmm.
she that was a much easier relationship, and easier to, like, open up to her, because she made my dad happy, and
Yeah.
had his person then. And so that's just a totally different dynamic than having young kid,
Hmm.
or being the young kid and having a step parent.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. And I definitely remember that too. With my stepdad, him and my mom got married, I think, whenever I was 8. And so I always grew up with him being kind of, around and in that role. And then my dad ended up getting remarried whenever I was like 20, I think. And so it's a different
Yeah.
relationship I have with, yeah, with, um, I don't even like calling her my stepmom. I mean, with Anna, that's her
Yeah.
legal term is that she is, a stepmother. But with Anna, it's just much more of like a friendship. It's much easier. There's guidance, and I can talk to her at different points of time about other topics. But yeah, relationships are tough, man, or they're evolving always.
Right.
And um, at different phases of our life, I think that they are easier to walk into. Um, but that doesn't mean, I guess, they stay on that path. And we just have to stay on our path, I guess, to make it work. So we'll see, you know. We'll see how this
To be
journey ends
continued.
out, right? 10 years later. We'll see how this goes at that point. I mean, I still got to get through all those fun, you know, teenage years and all that. And there's
That's true.
such a difference
Such a
between girls and
difference.
boys. Yeah. And
Yeah.
at the different ages. So,
Yeah.
oh,
It's going to hit right about the time you hit menopause too. So that should work out well for you too.
it's all going to be bad. I'm sure. Right. We all know how patient I am with things. And so I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm sure it will.
Well, she'll be older. So I do like that age. Just as like
Yeah.
one
That's
thing
really
that,
your sweet spot.
yeah, I love a good teenager. So that'll might be okay, but that's just because of a natural thing that I enjoy. So we'll see. We'll see. Like I like it when people are verbal and can kind of like talk back to me with intellectual authority. You know what I mean? They just don't have that capacity to do that at like 7 or 8, and I don't have the patience for it. So
Yeah.
anytime that happens, like, nope.
Yeah. See, I'll be calling you when my kids are teenagers because that's the least age group or I enjoyed it the least when I worked in a middle school for 5 years. I really just had a hard time connecting with those kids because they were somewhere, they were still very immature, but they thought they were adults.
Right.
And it was just, I really struggled. You talk about being uncomfortable, like sitting in a room, if I was like testing a student, I mean, I really struggled with relating to them, coming up with conversation. Whereas you stick me in a room with a little person, I can play dolls all day, and it's just totally different. You just vibe with different age groups. And I don't vibe with teenagers is what I learned.
Well, I think those are good lessons for us to learn as moms, though. You know what I mean? We fit real naturally with certain ages of our kids. And that doesn't mean we love them any less. It just means that there are just things within us that make it easier for us to like them. I could say I love them all the time, but there are definitely periods that I've enjoyed them more. And I don't personally believe that says anything negative about it. It's just a point of self-awareness. And I know where the struggles come from is just that natural setting that I have within my life. So like we said, we'll see where this whole story takes us, won't we?
Yes, that's right. To be continued.
Right. So hopefully some of you guys were able to relate to a little bit of that. If you got any tips you want to share here, then please be sure to email us, to contact us on our social media, on our website, everything, because we want this engagement. We want this feedback. So just makes it so much more fun and maybe validating, maybe gives us some other things to think about. We're open.
Yeah, absolutely. Validating, I think, is a good point. Like validating some of the thoughts that we have as moms, as professionals, as wives, but also just what are some other things that people are going through because we only have our narrow experience. So I would be curious to hear what other women in our age group, if they're step parents, what are some of the other issues that have arisen that you would like for us to talk about or talk through. And so, yeah, definitely check us out at the LYLASpodcast.com, our website. You can also find us on social media, LYLAS Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, YouTube. I believe we also got our Twitter up and running.
Yes.
So yeah, check us out on those platforms so that we can have some listener feedback. We love that human connection, as I keep saying. Like it's kind of what we're here for, is that human connection, but also trying to like help others normalize, talk about these things. I mean, ultimately, just like Sarah said, when they sat down and talked about these things, we have to talk about the hard stuff. Otherwise, it just, you stuff it down, it's all going to come out like a volcano someday. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about all the good stuff and the yucks.
And we'll throw in our silly fun things we do along the way too.
Right.
Right. As well as yours. So share them along with us too. All right.
All right. Until next time, LYLAS.
Out. Peace, guys. Thanks so much.